okay in that way that is not very okay at all. This is a thing. So this is going to be kind of different. Hi. There's nobody actually here, but I have agreed with myself that I was going to stream on Mondays. And so this is me trying to do that. And literally everything about OBS is broken today. And by that, I mean literally everything about OBS is broken today. It cannot capture my actual camera. I can see that it's working, but it doesn't matter. OBS won't take it. It cannot capture the laptop that I'm coding on. It can't do anything. And so OBS is so broken today that there's nothing that I can do other than turn on the laptop camera, I guess, and I can see chat and stuff. So we're kind of up a creek here. We're kind of limited. There's not much that I can do. And there wasn't anything that I could do to fix it or change anything. So, bad times. Bad times. This counts as pretty bad times. And I may or may not make it very brief. I'm pretty sure what with the proper camera actually giving audio that I am producing audio. So you could consider this to be a audio stream. I need to throw another log on the fire, and since I can't use the regular camera because OBS is broken and can't see it, I can't show you putting another log on, but by God I can put another log on the stream, on the fire, so there we go. You're going to have to take that as red or green since it's a coding stream. And this is probably going to burn me out real fast because I do not like failure. And I don't like doing stuff wrong. And it's not my fault that everything about OBS is broken today because I did everything the same. And ain't nothing more that I can say about that, really. There are many things I would like to be able to do here. Here's one of them is I can check and see if, as before, OBS is incapable of taking in the camera, so the camera is dead. I can also show you that if I go to the laptop screen, the laptop is just as dead. Like all of the cameras other than the laptop's built-in camera are dead, are black screens. And they're all actually working. I can see the output of the normal camera that I use on a backup screen. So what were we going to do? Maybe I'll rotate this around a little bit. I got my cup of coffee. I will not be enjoying it today because everything is broken and wrong. But sometimes it's good to not give up even when everything is broken and wrong. So here we are. And there's my coding, but you can't actually read it today, unfortunately. And I'll probably cut it real short because, man, this makes me sad. But here we are. What things were I going to do today? I keep looking at the camera instinctively, knowing that it's not actually going to do anything. If you were here, I hope you liked C-strip too. That I was able to do. C-strip 2 did actually work. I keep fussing with the things. Don't mind me, I'm not going to be able to let go of this. This is one of those things where I'm not going to be able to let go of it. I am going to be struggling to make sense of this situation. And I'm sure going to want to be able to fix this before next week, but I am not able to fix this for right now. What can I talk about? All I have to do coding-wise, I've got a little backlog, and the backlog will cover me for a little while, so I don't actually desperately need to write a plugin. I have got 4 things that I was going to do as far as kind of busy work, and that was going to be the stream. Mind you, I didn't know that all of the cameras and inputs on OBS were going to die for this stream, so that slowed me down even getting started. I will set it up so that I can see chat. If you do have questions, you can still ask me. That is something that I can at least do no matter how many other things are hopelessly wrong. And I can probably walk through the utility coding stuff that I need to do, even if everything is hopelessly broken and wrong. At least that's the hope. I would like to be able to believe that was true. So, let's start with MV2. And I keep glancing over and seeing if anybody has a question or something. And if I'm not mistaken... Oh no, my cables are all falling. Everything is terrible today. What are you going to do? Some days are about getting through when everything is terrible. I'm definitely quitting early today. But let's see, if I unmute it already. We can hear me just fine. That is a thing. So my audio is in fact working and sounds the normal way that it should. You know, and the funny thing about that is that audio is coming through off of the same capture equipment that's supposed to capture the camera. Oh, and the laptop should be coming in off this. And I think this is still working, but OBS can't see it today. So I really have nothing much to do other than put this stuff away, because I'll try to test run it by next week. I really wish I knew why OBS does this sometimes. Sometimes OBS just explodes, and nothing you do will make it work, and there is no explanation, and then it'll randomly start working again one day. This is not the first time that's happened to me. You can buy extra gear to try to plug it in to make it work. Like, that's one of the reasons I went to the Razer, is that I had been using a Blackmagic video capture, and that overheated and ended up burning up and ceasing to work. And now it can't be the Razer, because the Razer is how you're hearing this audio. The audio was coming through the main camera. But what are you going to do? And again, I have to look over this way, but I can see you. So if anybody has a question, ask it. And we'll be able to do something which is not the same as my usual stream, but part of what a live stream is showing up on the day. I would have even showed up on time if OBS hadn't exploded. There's a little pre-stream which is all just blanks and stuff. Oh, in theory I should see chat. Chat rate says 1 and I see nothing. Maybe I'm on the wrong chat. Maybe I opened up the wrong chat window. Let me test that assumption. If we are on this up, there's somebody. There's a couple of somebodies. That's good. Yeah, I'm sorry that OBS is down too. It throws me really bad. Oh, but I have a question. That is actually all to the good. If there's anything positive that I can do as my whole system blows, well, my whole system is fine. The video streaming system is messed up. Emulating a Pultec. So you're trying to do a thing that is like if you had a Pultec and put a smiley curve on it, and you want to also have multiband compression. That's something I normally don't do. And finishing with the basic limiter. And I guess you'd like all of those things to be Airwindows things? You could try the most recent Airwindows Baxendall for a really gentle smiley curve. And the reason I suggest that is because if you're looking for a Pultec, you're looking for a very primitive sort of filter. Pultecs are passive. Passive means you can only have very general kinds of filtering with inductors and capacitors. That's what a Pultec is. You could have some kinds of Pultecs that are entirely and completely passive. And you can get into like the ways that the transformers and inductors and things are built, but the bottom line is a Pultec is a very gentle slope, very simple basic filter. It's not going to be like a fancy parametric where you can hype up the resonance or adjust the Q. Pultec means you don't get to adjust the Q very much. It's going to be restricted. And I would say it's possible to get the smiley curve of Baxendall 2 is probably the most recent version of that one. And there's other stuff as well. But that is a known, simple, basic smiley curve that it would be similar to what you'd get off of a Pultec. As far as limiter, I don't really do things with limiters very much. What are you trying to make happen with the limiter? Are you trying to get it to be squishy, or are you just trying to clip off or snip off, limit off really sharp peaks? Because you might go for some form of, clipping or whatever. A fair question is also, are you going to try to boost into it? Also, OTT is a kind of limiter in its own right, so that might cover that. If you're looking for the OTT thing, you can go for that. That's going to wreck a lot of other things as far as the relationships of sounds with each other. That's why I don't normally go for it. But if you're looking for something on the end of whatever you're doing to get your sound, the thing that I like doing, particularly if you're trying to snip off sharpness in the peaks, is I make clip only 2 for that reason. Like, clip only is specifically for that kind of purpose. It is a clipper, but if you have really sharp, spiky little peaks going into it, it will tend to suppress them. And I use it in the place of how people use limiters generally. In particular, if you're using OTT, I don't think you need to use another limiter on after that. Especially if you're talking about somewhat compressed, multiplying compression by each other makes things insanely compressed. That might be more than you'd want. So you might be trying to, the things that you mentioned, you're probably talking about doing, try Baxendall 2 while pushing the bass and the treble both into your OTT or whatever you're doing for the multiband compressing, because I don't really do stuff that does multiband compressing, and run the output of that into clip only 2, for taking off any spikes that are remaining out of that. See what that does for you, because that is maybe the most effective use of getting that stuff happening while still having some of the Airwindows qualities in there. In particular, I can give you distortions and saturations that should be less like just a DAW than most of your OTT style things will give you. That will take you really far towards, you might as well just use a DAW or the stock plugins in a DAW. Knowing what you're doing is a very good point. That's very good for you to know that, because the thing about it is that what you intend to do is just as important as how you're trying to do it. Let's see, MV. One of the things I'm doing here, I may or may not be able to get this done today. If I can't, that's okay. I have time for it. I'm going to try to get some of this utility stuff done, but it's not even going to involve listening, so the fact that everything is broken and wrong isn't really going to get in the way of that. I can do this while talking. I don't... Color needs to be in your intrinsic sound. It's what is built into the sound that you're using. It's not really something that is meant to be brought, like, when you're trying to get a sound, it lives in the raw capture. It lives in the initial synthesis. It lives in whatever you're doing. You're talking about a EDM track. What sources are you using? That's the big question. You know, talking about color tone VSTs. Why are you trying to get them out of VSTs rather than your initial synthesis? You might be better suited to digging deeper into the initial synthesis. So tell me more. Basically, tell me more. I'm not as much as I'm a rock and roll guy with an analog studio, and I'm very interested in guitars and basses and drums and things. I have that old school quality, but I've been interested in EDM for a long time. So I've learned more than most people like me about that. So tell me what you're trying to do. I probably get some of the lingo, and I certainly recognize some of the tools and things. You could be talking about VSTs and stuff. I might very well recognize what some of those are. So what are you trying to make happen? Give me some references for what you're trying to make happen. And you're synthesizing every sound from the stems, meaning that you've got synthesizers on the stems already? Or are you referring to the stuff that you've got in the stems? And if you're doing very basic synthesis, like, what synth are you using? That's what I'm going for. Because, I mean, some of the best synthesizers you could look for, as far as things you can just download, are available for free. You have access to a lot. I mean, if you were using, for instance, Surge, we could have a conversation about that for hours. There is a lot in Surge. There is and forgive me for continuing to look at the camera. I have a real camera, and I'm looking at it, and I'm actually being picked up on this camera because all of my video studio is broken today. No, I mean, the video studio is working just fine. You're hearing me through a microphone off of the real camera that I have. It's just that OBS is completely and hopelessly broken for me today, and I don't know why. It can't do anything. It can't even capture my screen off the laptop today. Ooh, interesting. You're doing kind of the... What are two examples of that? You're doing the burial Slash, what's the name of another guy that I know who's done this? There's a guy that did a sort of seminar and talked about this as well. That's very cool. You're doing a classic underground EDM person thing. I encourage that a great deal. Here's the thing. If you're snipping a sine wave from a kick, do you mean a analog kick, or do you mean somebody else's electronic EDM thing, which you have in stems? It does not matter what the answer is there, but it's still interesting to know about, because there's good information for all of those things. The thing that you're doing is very relevant, and there's a lot of possibilities in it. While I wait for you to answer, I do my work over here. It looks like I have done that bit already. How many of these things have I already done? Oh, hey, look at that. I have some of this preset up. Good for me. I didn't realize that I had done that ahead of time. Let's see whether I did that for Star Child as well. I know I haven't done it for these other two ones. Original stems are from an EDM track. That means you can do anything you want with the original signals, including further process them. And you could do that before or after snipping them. And the sound that you're getting is going to be, to some extent, from the underlying tracks. So let's say you snip a sine wave from a kick. Well, is it literally a kick made out of just a sine? Because if it's a kick that's coming off of an 808 or something like that, and you're able to snip that, you are also snipping all of the analog stuff built into that synthesizer. Your snip of the sine wave, even if you cut out the original attack, your sine wave isn't going to be truly a sine wave. Your sine wave is an 808 sample. So anything that you do with that has great possibilities. This is also stuff that happens with use of trackers. When people get really into trackers, back in the day, that's all you did. If you had, like, you know, your, I'm trying to scream tracker or something like that. Modern day renoise is going to be the most advanced form of that. What you would do is grab samples off of even, you know, like completed and mastered tracks. Pure kick sample, no 808 attached. 808 is a drum synthesizer, so you might be talking about, if you say a pure kick sample, do you mean something that, I mean, I put out kick samples. Are you using one of mine? Because that's the deal, is you could be talking about anything. When you say it's a pure kick sample, well, there are so many things that can do that job. And that's what makes it interesting. And then when you take just the end of the sample or whatever, and you're making a sine out of the up and down wave from some sample or other, what you got that off of has a huge amount of interest in how it's going to work. I was going to check Star Child. Let me do that. Do we have it complete? Yes, we do. That's cool. It's a bit of a head start. My job for today was going through these and undersampling them. Processed 808 kick sample from the stems. Yeah, so depending upon what processing is, you could have it off of a 808 and be getting the analog qualities of what else was included in that. If other things have been done to it, like it's distorted, or it's been run through something, or it just has a high noise floor, it went through channels of a desk, you have all of those things. Uh, I don't know. Bear in mind I'm running on Macs, so there's that. So I don't know whether ShareX would be able to replace OBS. I'm definitely looking into finding out whether there's a new update of OBS just because of things like this, and see whether this is a problem that's been addressed ever. Ah, and here's somebody else with a question. The question about using panning in there, optimally, panning would also be sitting before console, but you can live with there's a number of these things in which you can kind of live with the end results. As far as hurting the sound, console using built-in DAW pans works well with an LCR style panning. If you've got something sort of hard panned, then part of the panning is gonna be a little bit weird compared to if you were able to use the pan before the console system. This is why console is really better off post all of the adjustments. As far as hurting the sound, that's putting it rather strongly. Instead, it's not working exactly the way that you would have anticipated, like that it would be possible to make it work better. It would be possible to make it more cleanly do the thing it's designed to do. Hurting the sound is another story, because it's just changing it in a way that is not as designed. In other words, in different pannings, or if you're using the fader or whatever, what's going to happen is you will have your channels be typically in certain places more saturated than they really ought to be or expected to be. That's not necessarily a problem. It's just not as designed. It's not really hurting anything so badly. But there is still room for designing a DAW around this, or finding a DAW that can put plugins, post all of those things, and go from there. I'm not sure anybody's really doing that, but it would be great if they did. And yes, it would be good if the console system was able to run post-pan as well as post-fader. Like, this shouldn't put you off from like using it at all, because not using it at all means you're just straight up DAW style everything. And that's fine. It's a kind of choice. If you're using the Airwindows console system because you prefer the way that that sounds, and so it's a trade-off. You use it the way that it sounds, but then you could be stuck with DAWs that are forcing you to have it not working as designed. I'd love to be able to do a DAW that included this and had everything working properly. It's beyond my capacities all by myself. Like, the designing the audio processing is within my capabilities, but building the DAW is not within my capabilities. Star Child is ready to go as well. Let's start getting some things set up for future weeks of work, especially if I can get the video streaming going again. Or simply to have plugins that I can give to. One nice thing about the brokenness of this setup is that the audio that you're hearing is coming through the full cameras. Like, it's my good audio. Everything else is busted. The video part is busted in two different places, but the audio is absolutely fine. So this is how it sounds for my plugin videos and my normal streams and stuff. And it's like, okay, I should see whether I can make the let's see whether we can make this boring old video more interesting. We're just going to play a little bit, seeing as things aren't the way they're supposed to be. We can tone down that color correction a little bit because we don't really need it to be there, but we can also, let's see what we can do here. Let's apply a LUT. Let's not apply that LUT. Oh, here we go. How about applying a weird psychedelic LUT? Check this out. Hey! So, our visuals are completely broken, but now they're weird and fun. Gotta love it. Or maybe you don't have to love it, but this is what it is. Oh, I can get even crazier. Check this out. We're going to have a really weird old time. Actually, let's cut this one off. Alrighty. So if this is too distracting, let me know. It's going to be kind of freaky. So it goes. But yeah. And yeah, it's normal if stuff is Windows exclusive. That's not that unusual. Well, I mean, the video, here's the story. Seeing as the video is broken today, maybe I can put a sign up saying when video is broken. Text free type 2. And let's select a font. Normally I like Lato, JKL. Oh, hello. Okay, and it's broken in half, I tell you. Yep. Let's make the video even more broken. Oh, hang on. You're still not giving me the actual camera. Oh well. So what are we up to now? Filters. LUT. We're going to do an even coarser LUT. Alrighty. So that's going to be pretty weird. Yeah, I do in fact have a cool video synth. It'd be a bit much trying to set that up today. But funnily enough, I can in fact plug it in. I wonder whether I'll get anything off of that. That'd be crazy. Let's see. Oh, are you not turning on? Yeah. In this setup, the video synth is like literally this one here, and I should be able to. Maybe it's just taking a while to boot up. It's a thing called the Sleepy Circuits Hypno. And if I plug it into that input, it should be getting power and eventually start up. At least one would hope. And so, if it does that, and it did. So when we say video synth, we mean something kind of like this. I've actually got it set to Yeah, we're not doing the webcam. That's what I should do, is when the regular stuff breaks, what I should do is go to the Hypno and use its webcam to put them on. But we've got stuff like this that goes on. I think pink was supposed to be the yeah, you know what? It's gonna take too long to set this up for using the video synth. Although what I could do, let's see. First this. Have that wander. This. Have this wander. That be smaller. Grab that. Make that be smaller. Oh, hello. Do we just stop working for some reason? That's a drag. Boy, like literally everything breaks today. Damn. So much for that little sucker. Now if we turn this guy back on again, well, that ain't right. But it lives, so and then let's just make it a lot dimmer or something. Wow. Alrighty. So that was pretty aggressive. Don't mind me, we're just entertaining ourselves on the day of book and everything. Oh wait, one final thing. Don't mind me. I am just amusing myself on a particularly challenging day when all of my stuff is kind of messed up. So the next thing that we do is add a Luma key. There we go. There we go. So now that looks like video being broken. Now we can continue our conversation. I am satisfied with how broken the video looks. Anybody checking this out, they will be like, what? So, and I can get back to my regular work. Satisfied with how broken everything looks. What is the most extreme FX plugin I made? Try Glitch Shifter. Glitch Shifter is pretty good as far as that's concerned. Yeah. Oh, everything's melting. Yeah. Got to. I mean, if I can't make the screen look actually good, we might as well make it look completely insane. And yeah, that's it. This is a combination of a lookup table and Sleepy Circuits Hypno. In fact, as long as I'm being crazy and wacky, I can make the Hypno be in a lookup table too. So let's add that lookup table. It'll probably go to the same place, or not. That's okay, I have it in the side menu just for this reason. Go to the same lookup table, then go to filters and move that up ahead of. And so now we have the various craziness being combined together. You know, one of the things that really frustrates me about the Sleepy Circuits Hypno is I don't get to modulate or put CV into this hue rotation thing. I got this hue rotation thing, and using it, I can do some pretty radical stuff, but I have no input for that. So that's kind of annoying. Hey GrooveQ. No, what I mean, literally the video is actually broken. I have the good camera that I use for my plugin posts, and it's supposed to go into OBS. OBS doesn't see anything except for the webcam on the laptop and Sleepy Circuits Hypno for some reason. So that's what we're doing. I don't know if anybody particularly enjoys this. You're hearing me over the microphone that's part of the proper quality camera. So it sees the camera, but it doesn't see the video of the camera. And so here we are. Now let me bounce back to this other stuff that I was doing. And yeah, if you would like to ask questions, I'll do this for another hour. If we have an enormous amount of fun doing this and it's just a big game, then we can continue doing it. If this turns out to be something that I do on the regular, I might find up a different way of having a different microphone in there and then be doing it from different places, because the location I'm in is really the make videos for Airwindows location. Come to think of it, I can continue to play with some of this. There. Now we have lighting from several directions. And that will just further... Have I been listening to any drum and bass recently? You know, when I have a real tendency to go and listen to dub techno. So that is a very common thing for me, is listening to that. D&B's, it's interesting. It's like, I will absolutely return to stuff like Burial. Sort of the more chill kind of stuff. I have a great interest in the aggressive hardcore D&B, but at the same time I don't necessarily go to it for like just chilling out listening to it any more than I go to like extreme metal or something. And I'm interested in metal as well. There's some similarities between metal and D&B. But yeah, it's an interesting question that... Let's see, firstly, I'm going to come up with a special name for this because this is a new plug. It's the vibrato out of Galactic, so we'll see about whether that can be a thing. And the way I start doing that is by beginning and grabbing a copy of Galactic, and then I will edit that as I go. Or if I can identify just the stuff that is the vibrato, maybe I'll just copy over only that. That being the intention. The intention is I would like to grab some variation off of only the vibrato. And I'll leave all of the sliders on. Yeah, I'm going to have to remember this in case this ever happens again, because this version of Video is Broken today is just too amusing. It's like, oh my god, is it so broken? This is the most broken thing I could ever possibly imagine. Woot. So let's see. What are we doing starting off? Firstly, we want to keep all of these in case I need to use them. Again, anybody who has just showed up, I would be showing you what's on this screen if I could. All my video is broken. You can tell, can't you? What else have we got here? We've got an IIR filter. I do not think that's part of the vibrato. But I am sure that I have arrays that are part of the vibrato. And the reason I say that is that I know that the vibrato is done through delay loops in which the tap on the delay is moving back and forth. That's how that's done. So if I can identify that stuff, we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. That's not the part I'm looking for. That's the actual reverb. M, I think that's going into it. Ooh, but associated with this, it says vibe M, vibe R, depth M, and old FPD, whatever old FPD PD means. Let's copy some of this stuff over. Let's see what it takes to get this up and running. Sadly, you won't be able to hear it. If it does, I won't necessarily even play it. But these are the bits I'm going to need. And then it says vibe as well, so I think that is going to be part of the algorithm. Let me put some tabs in here so that it's lined up correctly. And yeah, by all means, shoot me other questions if you would like. The last question I saw was, have I been listening to any drum and bass recently? And the answer is, well, sometimes. I think the reason I gravitate to the dub techno is it's kind of like ambient music or something, in that I can use it as background music for thinking. And that has its own uses. So we're going to be using some of this stuff here. In particular, this AM is clearly part of what I want. Not thunder. What else did I have, though? I'm getting a little confused with all these windows. I had 5M, 5MR, depth M, and old FPD. I don't seem to be instantiating these. That's weird. What genre of music do I find the most unlistenable or unappealing? Well, that's an interesting question, because it's so relative. It's like I've become a fan of the musician Patricia Taxon recently. Not super duper recently, but fairly recently. And that kid, especially early on, makes some of the most unlistenable stuff ever. So it's a particular frame of mind. If you put on like one of the more edgy, industrial sounding Patricia Taxon albums, that is a particular taste. That's a particular time where you would be listening to it. But if that's the mood for the day, then alrighty. That's another good example in that I tend to not like hyper pop. I tend to not like modern, DAW-driven, just extremely artificial. Like did a tweet at one point saying like, okay, this is your reminder that everybody has to go and listen to this Autechre album that will change your life. So I know what Autechre is. Autechre is actually an interesting example of the answer to that question, because it's basically like C-sound explorations. It's stuff that is synthesized off of literally computer programs. And I went and listened to some of this album that Patricia had pointed me to, and was like, yeah, I like this better when she does it. And I like knowing about it, and I have all the respect in the world, but I'm almost never going to listen to Autechre just for my own gratification. But I'll listen to fairly generic dub techno when it's that stuff where it sounds like somebody's going womp, 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 womp. And then there's also bass of and, you know, chord stings here and there. And it's at a very relaxed pace. And everything about the sound of it is this sort of organic wash. I have an insatiable appetite for that kind of stuff. And it would be extremely difficult to get out of the Autechre style rig. And yeah, it's all very relative, and it's also how you go about making it. That becomes part of the challenge, is how you go about making the thing. GECS, you'd have to explain what that is, because I'm not sure what it is. Meanwhile, I will do a little bit more of this. Where does this say what it does? Is it just depth? No, it's depth M. Might as well instantiate these until I find out what they're doing. You know, I'm not sure I know who that is. 100 gex. I'm not sure I know who that is. Maybe I should look that up at some point. See what's going on there. Because I don't recognize that name. I recognize a fair number of names, but some of them get past me. Oh, look, here's an example of what old FPD is supposed to be. That's a really large number. Gosh. We'll go with that and see what it does. Don't know if we're even using that number. Sometimes there's little bugs and things that just happen to be not so broken that they can't. Sometimes things in there are broken in a harmless way where if I looked into it, I'd go, why did I leave that in there? But it's not doing anything. Part EDM and part urban. Well, I'd have to hear what that was. You know, it's possible I wouldn't agree with that and I felt about it. I'm still holding off on calling anything garbage, but that's fine. Where's 5M? Did I instantiate that? Maybe not. Anywho, here we are. Finding out how to do some of this. So we're not going to care about regen or attenuate or low pass. On the other hand, drift, that is dead center of what we're talking about here. Except we're going to want it to be parameter 1. Drift is part of this vibrato that I'm trying to isolate. Hey Brady, you know, today wasn't going all that well because I wasn't able to get the video working properly. So that strongly limits and changes what I'm doing here, but as it happens, I've spent a little over an hour just sort of hanging out anyhow. And the thing with that is that it doesn't necessarily wreck what I'm trying to do in that I was able to stream anyhow. And I'm able to do some of this work on the plugins anyhow. It just knocks me for a loop in an enormous way. Like, it flips me out when stuff goes that badly wrong. So I gotta kind of just deal with it because I can't really shake it off. It's like, okay, this day was ruined even though it ended up being fine because it was sufficiently different from what I was setting out to do. And my mind has slipped on the ice and fell over. And that's how that's going to have to be. And it'll take me maybe a couple of days to get over it. But, you know, it's the autism thing. That's not an ironic reference. That is literally how I be. Anyways, what have we got here? None of this matters. But this does. Hello. And here we go. Oh, interesting. It's part of a pre-delay too. Well, that could be tricky. If it's part of a pre-delay, then we don't necessarily want the pre-delay part of it. Let's grab all of this and just run with it anyhow. And let's leave that stuff off. We're probably going to be using dry wet. I don't know what the deal with commercial radio is anymore. I have discovered that fairly recently it became true that vinyl records are now outselling CDs. That said, the vinyl records these days are made off of hopefully 24-bit digital audio. So certain characteristics in the sound are going to be more intense if you go for the old school stuff that was literally made on old systems, like old records, and by that I mean like 1970s, and so were literally pressed off of old tape machines and all that kind of stuff. Like one of the things I've been thinking about and talking about recently regarding the attempt to make console emulations of classical desks is I need to do it from sort of the output, and the sounds that I'm getting need to work off of the best that I can hear from the result of these consoles played through vinyl records from the 1970s and earlier. That's how people hear and experience this stuff. So if I make something like that, it needs to include the full chain. It needs to include the full, like, recording to 2-track tape and then mastering that tape and all that kind of stuff. And that's what the model should be. So, that's an intention anyhow. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, if you buy a new version of this, it'll probably end up being a new version of somebody will have gotten hold of a tape of a tape of a tape of the original recording, and by that I mean, half-inch tape maybe, but it's still what it's going to be, and then it's going to have been digitized, and they will have run it through noise filtering or whatever, and then they put that onto the new slab of vinyl. Ben Jordan has some very colorful thoughts about the resurgence of vinyl, and I have every sympathy, really. Ben is also known as the Flashbulb electronic music guy, and his deal with the modern vinyl resurgence is it's a terrible idea because he thinks it doesn't sound as good, but it also uses a lot of plastic. It burns a lot of oil. It is not carbon friendly. And I agree. I agree with that part. I would be just as happy if the vinyl resurgence was just people frantically going and finding old records like the ones in my collection and collecting those and valuing them very highly and not trying to make any more, because when they make new ones I don't think they're doing it as well as you could. It's all, and I have a couple of Pixies records that are re-releases simply because I'm a Pixies fan. Oh gosh, Patrick Alfinar, cool. Maybe you were trying to help me buy better video. What I really need is better OBS, and OBS is free, so it's not really a matter of that. But thank you so much. That's very cool. You were helping me step in the direction. And I'll just say this, anybody doing stuff like that, specifically it's the Patreon I'm watching, but I always appreciate anybody helping me out in other ways. You are helping me walk towards being able to get a Bricasti reverb and start doing plugins modeling that. That's one of the things that I was stepping towards today. So I'll continue doing a little bit of this. And by all means, ask me any questions that you would like. But let's see now. ML, MR. FiveML is not being used anywhere. That is fine. If I ran this, it might actually work. I will be wanting to get a Bricasti M7. I have a old MIDI-Verb 2, and a lot of the stuff that I used to do was on the original MIDI-Verb, which is the one that isn't even rack mountable and doesn't even have normal studio inputs. It's RCA only, like it was a record player. Um, I did a bunch of things on that original MIDI verb, and it has its uses, but if it's a matter of trying to use my plugins to get the sound of something, I'd rather go for the Bricasti, because people normally cannot access that. I don't think a lot of people can get one of those. Oh God, yes. Freyskin, you are so right. It is not Orbit King Kickstream. In fact, if it says that it is, I should probably change that. Or not. Let's bounce over to there. Go to stream settings briefly. See whether I have any ability of changing any of the settings. It kind of doesn't look like I do. Gosh, what's going on there? There's stream settings for sure, but I do not see where I can change. Oh, do I have an edit stream? Doesn't look like it. Okay, whatever this stream says that it is, you're going to have to suffer with it, because I don't see how I can change what the stream says it is. And that's not to say that I shouldn't be able to. Maybe I should be able to, but for whatever reason, much like how OBS was working for me, I don't see how to do that. GrooveQ, back in the day I did. You could not unreasonably say that back in the day I took so many drugs that I had to give them up, because I did in fact have to give them up. And that's why I enjoy visuals like this, is because I lived that for a little while. When I was in college, I wasn't able to do anything very useful while doing that. I wasn't able to do any plugins. I wasn't able to do any music. When I was on the drugs that look like you see, it was an interesting experience. I think it changed me in various ways. I wasn't able to function. So bear that in mind. So now I look at the pictures and I don't try to do that kind of stuff for real. GrooveQ, fair. Bear in mind also that I'm a big fan of Frank Zappa. I enjoy some of the more out melodies and things. And yeah. And I'm not going to say drugs are bad, kids. All I can do is say what happened to me, which is that I had to give them up. I did too many, and it got in the way of me continuing to be Chris. And I just, rather than say drugs are bad, here's what I will say. If you were, and I'm dead serious here, if you are in the situation where you've gotten a whole bunch out of doing drugs and it was really great for a while there, and then you start doing this thing where you are, let's talk even something as simple as smoking pot. That's not nearly as intense as the acid and the mushrooms and all that other stuff that looks like the visuals I'm showing you. And the visuals are because the video is broken. It really is. The day that you buy a bag of pot and you have not opened it, and you open it, and you're already worried because it's not going to be enough. It feels like it's running out. You haven't used any of it. It feels like it's running out. That's a sign. Because it really ruins the enjoyment of the whole thing. Like, when you go to that place, it's kind of like alcoholics being pickles, and once you become the pickle, you don't get to turn back into the cucumber. Well, if you're a druggie, and you have your fun with all of the stuff, you open your mind until it's spilling out your ears and survive those experiences. You've seen things most people don't see. You've seen like C-beams glittering off the Tannhauser or whatever, the Matrix, the Blade Runner reference. And you get to that place where now you need to get more because regular world isn't okay. And you get some of your drugs, and before you've even used any of them, it's not enough. That's when you you go to meetings or something. So, and which is what I did. And it's interesting because when you get clean off of being that person doing that thing, there's other experiences that you get where it's like you you stay clean, you stay sober, and you're just stuck in this wall of no, this is just real reality and it sucks. There was a day that I was out on the porch in the apartment that I was in, and I noticed the tree next to me. And I was not in a full-on acid flashback, but I kind of woke up for a second and I was like, whoa, because I saw what was in front of me. Rather than being so messed up and blocked in my own head that I needed to use drugs to knock myself loose. It turned out to be possible. Like, some of the old acid heads back in the 60s would say, oh, you reach the new zone and then you can do it without taking drugs. There is an element of truth to that. Like, if you do drugs and go wandering around at night and your mind is blown because there's these colored halos around the streetlights, some of that shit's real, man. If you were able to go out sober and clean, and you go in the streetlight and you actually perceive what is actually there, which can include, colors and halos and optical effects and stuff, but your brain doesn't process it into that is a streetlight. It is white and it is this color. It's similar to the art book, drawing on drawing on the right side of the brain, drawing on the some side of the brain, where they work heroically to try to get you to be able to see what is in front of you, because our brains will take reality and rewrite it and generalize it and make it something boring and understood. That's how our brains work. And when you're the kind of person that needs to resort to drugs, it's maybe because your brain is doing that too much in ways that are not helpful. Like, your brain is taking everything and writing it to become threatening. Your brain is taking everything and writing it to become boring. And getting past that, well, you can cheat by doing drugs and then just being physically ripped past that. But when you work on yourself and, like maybe get clean, sober, or whatever, and you get to experience stuff that is what reality really is, rather than just your expectations of what reality must be, I think it's easier for people to understand that when they have had such hang-ups that, people will talk about somebody who does lots of drugs. Oh, they should not do those things and just enjoy life the way that it normally is. Well, for some people, their histories are messed up enough that if they are just experiencing life without being on drugs or whatever, they're completely in a box. They're mind altered as a natural thing. They're mind altered as a disability. Their experience is so messed up that drugs are like an improvement, because it's knocking them off of a really deleterious state of being. The trouble with drugs is, first of all, you never develop the ability to do any of that for yourself. And then secondly, that it can, it'll wear you down in various ways. It'll wear you down physically or mentally. Anyways, that was the tangent on... Here, let me plug in the laptop a little bit more while I'm at it. When I do these, it burns up the stream. It burns up the battery of the laptop pretty good. So there have been times when I lost track of thought on drugs and things. Let us go and do a little bit more of this busy work on my plugins, and we'll see how that goes. I can probably build this, have it run. Oh, well, bear in mind the way this works. Generally, when I build it the first time, I have to build it twice because it hasn't compiled the other parts of itself yet. It is a project template-ism. Build it a second time, and we've actually got some stuff that are not covered here. So let's cover some of this stuff. what can be parameter 2. I'll simplify this algorithm a little bit while I'm at it. There we are. Now that bug is not there. And we need count m. We need a count variable, and that is part of our defaults in here. So let's define that. And then let's go back to the header file. I know it's going to be an int. Let's see, integer. Let's take away some of these tabs while we're at it. I'm not really sure why that lines up the way that it does, but it does. Save this. What other problems did I have? Attenuate. Attenuate and delay m. Okay. Well, now let's see. What do we have? Oh, there's one. And delay m is also go here. Let's make it an int and instantiate it there. Oh, there's another question. All right. Can somebody? Oh, hey, Mel. Yeah, I got to talk with Mel more. Mel is somebody that I would like to see more solidly planted in the place in which they live, because they're talking wildly about moving to the United States in order to do an album with me or something, and there's a practicality aspect of there that has to be respected. Anyways, try making plugins. So complete beginner, what to start? Oh goodness. Learn C++, Juice, in the digital audio processing book. What I would recommend is, if you're following me, you're interested in the DSP of it. If you can get any of my plugins to build, like download my source code, it's open source code. See if you can get any of my stuff to build. If you can get any of my things to build and make a plugin that you can install and use, then you can be off and running with that. And digital audio processing books may or may not be helpful to you. They're not very helpful to me. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do, sure, but to me it all kind of sounds the same. I don't really like the sound of digital audio processing book and the kinds of stuff you get off of that. And GrooveQ was asking, can somebody explain Keith Richards, A Kind of Living Embalming? Keith is a weird fellow. You wonder about stuff like that. It's similar to like if you talk to George Carlin, and Carlin was always the biggest druggy pothead ever, but then you would talk to him in an interview and he would have no reason to say this, but he would like, weirdly, I haven't smoked pot for a couple of months. And I can kind of believe that. Some of those folks, the deal with them is, we talk about things like that. You got Keith Richards and who knows what he's on. I'm a coffee drinker. So I will continue to drink coffee, even though I had to give up a lot of more heavier, crazier drugs. I used to smoke tobacco. I gave that up. It was hurting my lungs. But as far as Keith is concerned, he has talked about the deaths of Graham Parsons. I think maybe the death of Lowell George. Keith's take on that kind of stuff is interesting and relevant. Like, if you were on drugs and you're into the stuff that is really hardcore, one of the things that you have to resign yourself to is that life is just going to be a slog of getting more drugs. And if you're wealthy enough to not really have to worry about that very much, life is entirely about just feeding yourself with more drugs in a regular kind of fashion. And that might not be very fun sounding, because it ain't. But the thing that Keith said about, I think it was Grant Parsons, is, he effed up. He made the one mistake you don't want to make. He got clean and then took a strong shot. And that is what killed him. And that's true. If you get clean, your tolerance goes away, and then if you try to use the way that you used to use and you were onto stuff like heroin or whatever, it's very easy to get killed off of that. If you're looking for getting higher than you ever got before, it will kill you, depending upon what you use. Or it'll just break your brain. Like if you needed to, as you see my visual today, the trippy outy stuff is just an aesthetic that I enjoy greatly. But there was this one time in college, before I got clean, and there was this wild kid named Frank, and he showed up one day, and he was like, I got all of these mushrooms. And he had this baggie, and the bottom of it was like full of psilocybin mushrooms. And I was like, oh, that's nice, cool, let's have one. And he was like, let's split it. And I was like, seriously? Why would you do that? Can we not do that? Why don't you? Tell you what, let's just have some. And he told me, okay, have as many as you want and I'll eat all the rest. I told that kid, give me half, because I thought he would be killed by what he was proposing to do. I was like, well, first of all, wow, this is really generous. And second of all, oh my God, seriously? Well, we're in it together. And yeah, I'm not making that up. That literally happened. And that was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. Like, woof. We're in this college dormitory, like barely able to get down the hallway, going into the tiled white fluorescent lit bathroom and freaking the fuck out in there. And man, and we went back to my room where I had a Chris style stereo to listen to records and just unwind from surviving being in the bathroom. Anybody who has taken that many psychedelics would probably be able to relate. And yes, it is like surviving being in the bathroom. Oh, we didn't die from brain exploding in this echoey white tiled bathroom with the light and the everything. And we got back down the hallway, which was a good 25 or more feet. That was a heroic journey all by itself. And got into the room and were able to chill a little bit more. And tried to put on records. And I put on Yes's Relayer and almost killed the poor kid. I was digging it. I put on Gates of Delirium, and I was having a great deal of fun with the like. If you know the Gates of Delirium off of Yes's Relayer, you know what I'm talking about. And I was just breaking this poor guy on far too many mushrooms, and so we had to switch over to something else. So we put on the Kinks Village Green Preservation Society, and he loved the hell out of that. Very, very bouncy and cheerful and stuff. And yeah, we survived the whole thing. If that's you, you may come to a point where you've had enough. You may come to the point where you don't need to do any more mushrooms or any of those things, or be the person that has to take like all of the drugs. Because that's the kind of person that eventually ends up having to stop, or just finding more. And I think that's where we got into that conversation. You were talking about Keith Richards. Keith Richards wasn't that guy. Keith Richards was the guy who would have been like, give me 2 of those mushrooms and I don't care whether you live or die, do what you want. And he would not have done what I did. Oh, I couldn't say that I was necessarily enjoying it either. It was just too damn overwhelming. It was far too intense. Like this is why I enjoy some of the aesthetics that I produce. And if you're not blowing your brain out and trying to follow all of this, then you might enjoy the aesthetic. It's pretty. It's like stained glass windows and stuff. But yeah, the difference between me and Keith Richards, which is why he may still be using drugs, or he may have gradually tapered off for health reasons. I don't honestly know. But he would not have done what I did. He would not have been like, that looks dangerous. You're going to do whatever I leave behind? That's scary. Don't. I'll do half of them with you. Keith wouldn't have done that. If he decided, like, I want to do 2 of those because that's the amount that I need to do in order to get healthy, then he would do 2 of those because that's the amount that he would do in order to get healthy. And that's why he's not dead. I am arguably more of a drug addict in that sense, in that I needed to push the boundaries. I needed to push the limits. I do it with my plugins. And yeah. And so I went to all those places and I had to get clean and sober and did. Although you wouldn't know it from my stream today. But normally my streams are much more chill. If I can fix OBS, my stream will be more chill again when we get back to it. But I do not have attenuate. And that is because we don't need attenuate, because this is a vibrato and not a full reverb. So build succeeded. So I will check that later to see whether or not it does what I thought it did. But that's cool. That's a little start. Like, this will be Galactic Vibe. Another reason I'm playing it is because I can't actually show you, because I can't patch it through into the stream, because the stream is super broken. But Galactic Vibe is ready to be fooled with when I find it convenient. That's cool. So now I have MV2 ready to be undersampled, Starchild 2 ready to be undersampled, and Galactic Vibe ready to be run and tried out and tested. Finally, verb tests. So here's what I'm doing with this. I'll call it a test. I want to make a test bed which I can use that will probably always have all of the sliders on it for my personal use, so that I can dial in stuff to sound like Bricasti reverbs when I get that to full width. That's the hope. It is, well, Tacky Bunker, honestly, he probably wouldn't have died, I don't think. And if you get sufficiently mentally broken that he could have been rendered a vegetable off of the number of mushrooms that he took, it would probably be happening to me as well. When we split, I think I potentially saved him. Part of that was just me being addict, being like, I want to get really, 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 really high. And I did. And it's very generous of him to be offering all of that, but that's another druggy thing. But yeah, it's one of the things that when I talk to other people that get into recovery, one of the things that I often say or have to explain is with the distinctions between those various things. It's like it was not the baggie of mushrooms that was the drug addict there. This is also possibly salient to why Keith Richards isn't dead. It's me. I was the person being the drug addict there. I was the person asking for, give me half of those. I could very easily have been like, no, give me one. I don't want to blow my mind away. No, I did. I did want to blow my mind away, and I did that pretty successfully as long as I could. And by the time I stopped, it starts feeling like a treadmill. It starts feeling like a little hamster wheel. And it's never enough. if that's who you are, it stops working out very well for you, because first of all, you build up a bunch of tolerance for stuff like pot or whatever. And then secondly, you don't get back. You don't get back to those first times and you're like, everything's going to be okay because I found the thing and I got high. It's like that's sort of a one-time deal. That is one place in your life. You don't get to go back to it, really. So, which can seem really depressing if that's all you can imagine as life being. But fortunately, it's really not. You know, there's more to life than that. It's just, you know, like hitchhiking through Europe as a life experience or whatever. You can hitchhike through your brain as a life experience. And it's like, okay. I would hope that the music that I make appeals to people who are doing that with themselves. I would hope that the music that I make is a refuge for people who need desperately to escape from whatever their life or their brain is. And whatever else they do in order to do that, it's like, okay. But yeah, you know, you go to places in your life, not all of them are permanent. Sometimes they're just places you visit, and they become part of you. Oh, my fire is running out. Just a moment, I'm going to go and throw another log on here. Chat away. I think I know why that happened too. That is very likely to catch and go. I probably don't need to go and light it. I'll keep an eye out on it anyhow. I burned that down pretty well. Oh, here's something I could do. Give it a little extra air. I'll have to fool with that if it doesn't work. The stove burned itself down for a bit, and then I put a new log in there, and I'm not sure whether it's maybe just smoldering and isn't actually going to catch, and that would not be great. I don't want a log smoldering its entire logness away. Oh, you missed my long live techno jams? Yeah, it's a bit of a drag. It's been quite a while, and I haven't been able to do music for like weeks. I have one track that you've been hearing snippets of every time I post a video. And I did that one track. It's good enough to be the underpinnings of an album, but I just haven't been finding enough time to do more. So the plugins and other things in life going on. Oh. Hey, the log just burst into flame. That's what it needed to do. Good, good, good. Yeah, I will have to consider the idea of doing music jams again. I'm wary because I've committed to things, and generally what will happen is I'm still an addict, so if I do live streaming, I will try to do more. And then if I'm doing that, I'll try to do the live techno jams. And if I'm doing those, I'll try to make the techno jam something where I could put out a record, a piece of music every week on the back of one of those techno jams. And then if I'm doing that, I'll want cover art for it. And I've gone to all of those places to the point where I just go until I burn out and have to stop. So that's something I'm keeping a sharp eye on, because it's a very real concern. Like, there's a lot of preparation that goes into so many of these things. That's what makes them amusing. That's what makes them fun. But I will say this, however. I am waiting on a piece of raw techno. What I'm pointing to here, not that you can see it because my video is completely insane, yay, but I'm pointing to a drum module. It is a Blue Lantern drum module. And that's all very well and good, but well over a year ago, I paid for a additional drum module by a company called Rabbit Elephant. And it cost the freaking earth. And it's a kick drum. And that is the thing that I would need in order to really get into doing the techno jams and making that stuff happen again. Because I've often had difficulty finding the kind of drum sound, the kind of kick sound that I'd want to use for stuff. Whereas this Rabbit Elephant one, you can't get them. It's like an 18-month lead time, and they're having trouble producing any of them. And the supply chain issues around COVID got in their way a lot. And even before that was happening, they had a astonishing, long lead time. You pre-ordered them like as much as 18 months in advance. And I did this. That is something that I did. And woof, yeah. So I am still waiting to see whether that shows up. Oh yeah. No, I have paid for a portal drum. I'm waiting to see whether I ever see the portal drum that I have paid for. I have paid for a portal drum more than a year ago. They claim that they will give you your money back if enough time expires, like the 18 months expires, and they're not giving the drum to you. No, that's the one that I want. That is the one that I want. Mind you, I could do useful things with Orbit Kick, which will be coming out in the next, certainly in the next month. I will be able to do cool stuff with Orbit Kick. That is a equally valid place to go with there. But yeah, Portal Drum is sort of the unobtainium ultimate, it's like the Yamaha CS80 of kick drum modules. And there are a number of things about it that I believe I understand what they are, and that is very, I'm pretty sure I know why this can be as amazing as it can be. There are several things about it which I'm pretty sure I can figure out. I might be able to pluginize some of those aspects. For now, let's jump into verb tests and do what I said I was going to do today, which is, let's see, verbity is the one I'm going to want to draw from. It's going to be verbity 2, because verbity 2 was the one with the 5x5 matrix. I need to do Godot engine visualizers. That's in the last week, one of the things that has happened is I've been able to get Godot 4 up and actually running. I'm doing some of the things that I wanted to be able to do with it, like access a value in a image as a number rather than just as a color. And there's various ideas I have going for that stuff. One of the things, though, is I want to be able to draw a picture on the screen and then plot out where the reverb delay returns would be. I want to be able to spell out, like, this is how Galactic is set up. These are the delay echoes. These are where the echoes show up in the sound. This is what the reverb tail looks like. Because then if it's a uniform distribution of stuff, that is one thing. And if it's other interesting distributions of stuff, that's another thing. And if I can play with a visualization of that, then I can get different numbers. Like here, I can't show you sadly, but verbity. Here's the new verbity. Here we have the instantiation for a bunch of different verbity, and we got a delay line of 5004, 4952, 4920, 4800, 4752, 4350, 4158, 3930, 3530, 3330, and all like that. And down here, got the same thing, except for that these are literally prime numbers and they're all multiplied by size. So they're all in the same relation, but they're all being scaled up and down. 5003 times size, 4951, 4919, 4799, 4751. All of these being scaled up and down. They're all part of a householder matrix, so they all kind of interact with each other. The question becomes, once they've done that, what is the pattern of echo that is being produced? And it should be able to plot that out and then change these numbers, or indeed change these numbers in the interface of like write a Godot program where I'm just copying these numbers over and going like, okay, and this makes a delay pattern that looks like this, foop, and then change one of the numbers, see what it does. I should be able to do that. There's a lot of detail in there. You'll notice that well, you won't notice because I'm not showing it to you because my video is broken today. If I was showing it to you, it says things like, A, F, K, P, and U are the first bank. B, G, L, Q, and V are the next bank. They get smaller and smaller, and for every bank in the householder matrix, each of which feeds the next one along the line, and each echo of which feeds every other echo going in. It's distributed this way, where it goes from longest to shortest within a bank. I don't have to do that. I could be doing it with, like, these are all the longest, and then these ones on the end are all the shortest, and what would happen is the range of possible delays will become much more compressed. And it'll sound more like a single really complicated echo. But the question becomes, how do you arrange all of these things? There's the rub right there. So that's something else that I need to experiment with. But I am going to, it's getting on towards 1. So what I would like to do is set this up, and then I will say good day to the stream, and by next week I'll see whether I can't get OBS running again, because I don't know what was wrong with it today. OBS freaked out on me today, and so I ran with it, and that's why we have the crazy visuals. I promise if this happens again, I'll go with the crazy visuals again, sure. Might as well make it kind of fun, right? So we're going to copy over all that stuff. I'm going to copy over the labels of some of these things while I'm at it. Not as necessary, but... Oh. Don't mind me, I thought I clicked there. Clearly I did not. Then I'm going to copy these names so that I have the beginnings of labeling. Since it's from Verbity 2, it's room size, sustain, mulch, and wetness. But that's just the start. See, the whole thing about this is the idea I want to explore here is, can you take this like 5x5 elaborate thing and make it so you have a full-on biquad filter in just, oh, okay, see you later, Helmut, and have the biquad in just one of the delay taps in one of the banks. Because if you have 25 biquad filters, well, that's really intense. There's a lot going on there. But if you have just one, whatever you're doing with that is going to be 1/5 of the total output of that one bank, which is then feeding all the other banks. So that 1/5, CPU streaming is going on wonky again. So that EQ that you do to one of the banks is going to be 1/5 of the output that's feeding all the other stuff. So it's going to affect 1/5 of the final output taps, and that's before you get into feedback. Once you get into feedback, the coloration that you added there is going to go back in and affect literally everything else. So that means anything that I can do equalizer-wise, anything that I can do, I don't know, noise-wise, I could do an average filter if I want to darken things, but I have the option of picking just one reverb tank section and doing stuff with it. Or for that matter, what Verbity 2 is doing is cross-modulating by taking the outputs and crossing over only 1 of 5 of the reverb tanks, and that's causing it to have part of that dual mono thing where a sound over here reverbs over here. And with just one crossover, it means that it reverbs over there and gradually blends over. If it was all crossover, you'd have a noise and then the reverb would automatically be on the other side. So, given that I can swap over any of the feedback controls to flip sides, and it works, that means I can also have any side-to-side behavior I want out of the reverb. And this Verb Tests plugin, this is what I want to do to start iteratively solving the problem of how to make stuff sound like a literal full-on Bricasti M7. And that's why I want one of those. Like, thank you very much to the streamers called it Donos, the donation to the stream. I'm looking to the Patreon really more for that, but that's the purpose of trying to save up for this Bricasti. Is I really want one of those. I want to do my music through it and use it in my real studio, but I also want to emulate it. I want to copy it, get the sound of that thing, the famous presets that people like. For instance, Sunset Chamber, I think, is one of their ones. And interestingly, those are all presets. There's not a lot of point to going like, okay, make it so that you can go to Sunset Chamber and then change all of the controls and have a plugin for that, because it's an algorithmic reverb too. It also is likely a feed-forward householder matrix reverb. I don't know exactly how it's done, but the 5x5 work that I'm doing is getting a thick textural enough reverb tail that I think it's on the right track, and it's a matter of figuring out how do I combine the way that particular matrix works and get it to do the same things or stuff that is similar enough to what I want. So what we're going to do is I am going to, let's see, firstly, these are all 0 to 1, that's fine. This stuff up here is going to be fine as well. I'm going to want to instantiate, so we're going to reset, copying all this, making it so that I have a working plugin that compiles. Once I do that, I'll call it a day. And this is going to be the test bed for me doing my experiments and getting stuff to sound like what a real Bricasti sounds like. And it won't be a clone. I don't want it to be a clone. But I'm going to do what I can. For instance, if, like, the Bricasti never uses averaging filters in any of the taps to darken them, but I do that and I think that it sounds better, I'll go for that. I will go for best possible version of thing that I'm hearing off of this hardware device, because it's not going to just be the algorithm, it's also going to have to be sounding like what the analog stages of the Bricasti sound like. And those are special analog stages. It's not going to be just generic op amps out of those things. The reason it's costly for a reason. And Bricasti makes audiophile gear, and that goes into the M7. So I'll be using the full analog chain of the Bricasti on purpose, and that's what I'll be listening to. That's what I'll be trying to match, is the sound of that, but in the box. And then let's see, from the very top all the way to the very end. There's our very end. And here we are. Replace all that. And let's build. It never builds right the first time. That's the template doesn't include all of the libraries it needs the first time around. You build it, build the libraries, and the second time you build it, it says no issues, and that's just what it has said. So with that, we're going to quit out of Xcode, and let me start unwinding some of this craziness. So, hide NDI source. Filters. Europe. Normalcy. I did have the color correction hyped. Back to, oh hi. Now we are in regular mode again. I think I'm going to keep that text that says video is broken today, but let's shut it off. And with that, I will say good day to you folks. Now that the stream has worn off, as it were. And I will talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for hanging with me during this weird day. Bye-bye.